for coming to First Fridays, the first one of 2022. My name is Jim Johnson. I'm one of the co-founders of First Fridays. So we started, if you don't know much about us, we started in 2017. And here we are in 2022. You'll hear more about JA at the end of our presentation, but if you've never, how many of you have never been in this building before? It's your first time, all right. I think there's going to be an opportunity to have a tour afterwards, and I would highly encourage you to do that. If you ever have time when they have kids here, I would encourage you to do that, because it's crazy to watch what goes on, but what a phenomenal facility we have here. And they reached out to us and said, can we host a First Fridays? And so Jerry and I came over here and took a tour, and they said, we think this room is great, and I think this room is phenomenal. So this is super. And thank you for coming out on such a cold day. Mm-hmm. I was telling several that one thing I've learned about First Fridays is in the winter, it's in Indiana, it's never ideal. And we have a lot of fair weather friends. But you guys are, you come out and you've braved it. And you're smart because it's a little colder on this side with the windows over there. But we're really happy that you're here. How many of you, this is your very first Fridays you've been to? All right, great, welcome. We do this, as the name implies, every first Friday of the month, September through May. We typically meet on the campus of Indiana Wesleyan University on the south side of town down by Lutheran Hospital. So we're hopefully going to be drawing some north side folks to this space. Yeah, somebody already nodding their head. That's great. So we bring in, just if this is your first time, we bring in local leaders from Northeast Indiana only to come speak to leaders of Northeast Indiana. And that's what this is about. We've got some plans that we'd like to expand what we do. I've been in the process of talking to some Chamber of Commerce leaders in the counties that surround Fort Wayne, and we may be taking some of what we do on the road. I know the Huntington Chamber of Commerce president reached out to me and he said, hey, could you give me some names of some of your past speakers, because they do something called Leaders Edge or something like that in Huntington, and they'd like to bring some of our First Friday speakers to them. So we'll see what happens. We're excited about some possibilities of I've had a bank offer their community center, which is a huge space, and said we'd love to have you guys come up, and that was up in Auburn. So First Fridays is expanding and growing. I'm going to turn things over to one of our board members, Denise Mills. You might see our board members walking. We got a great board that serves with First Fridays. You probably got welcomed by them, or maybe personally invited. So Denise is going to come up, and she is going to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you so much, sir.
I don't think that.
Anybody that knows me agrees I don't need that. Good morning, I am Denise Mills. I'm excited to introduce you to our January speaker, and thank you so much to Jim for getting everything arranged and making sure that everything goes properly. Dr. Nick Mcbride is a husband, father of two, and a Jesus follower who believes that each one of us has been created with purpose, and that our purpose in action is an incredibly powerful influence on the world. Since graduating from Purdue's College of Pharmacy in 2014 and obtaining his MBA from IPFW in 2016, Nick has worked as a pharmacist in the Fort Wayne community, striving to care for, educate, and motivate others as a healthy living advocate. Nick also hosts the Nick Mcbride Show, a podcast that dives into a variety of topics pertaining to faith, family, and freedom, as well as personal growth and development. Today, he's going to share with us strategies that would enable each of us to own our influence. So please welcome Dr. Nick Mcbride.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. But can all of you hear me just fine, or should I use the mic? How are you feeling? We're good? All right. So first off, I want to thank you all for coming out and braving the quite frigid temperatures this morning. I'm glad you all made it safely here. As Denise mentioned, my name is Nick Mcbride, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you. Before we get started, though, I did just want to take a quick opportunity, if you don't mind, for all of us to express our gratitude through a round of applause to Jim Johnson, as well as Jerry, who's not here, and the entire First Fridays board for what they have created here and for the impact that it's continuing to have in the Northeast Indiana community. Appreciate you guys. So in alignment with the goals of First Fridays, it's my hope that through our conversation today, we will be educated to know, encouraged to grow, and empowered to sow as we leave here today. And also that we have a little fun here while we're at it. So to kick things off, by show of hands, how many of you would consider yourself to be an influencer? Okay. It's kind of an interesting question. How about this? Who comes to your mind when you think of the term influencer? Feel free to go ahead and shout out some names if you haven't. Your son? Okay. Anybody else? Her? That's awesome. Is it teachers? Okay, good. So why do these people come to mind? And what about them makes you think of them as an influencer? So if you're taking notes, or I should say since you're taking notes, go ahead and write down some of the people that maybe came to your mind and maybe even a few of the characteristics they have that you believe make them an influencer. So in today's society, we hear the term influencer thrown around rather ubiquitously. It's most often used when we reference someone maybe with a large social media following or maybe even a celebrity. I want to challenge that conception today, however, by suggesting that each and every one of you here, as a leader, is an influencer with the capacity for tremendous impact. Unfortunately, where we often run into a problem, though, is when we leave our influence untapped or without a purpose. So as we begin here today, I want you all to consider this question for yourself. How would my life and the lives of those around me look different if I were to truly own my influence each day? And go ahead and write this down as well so you can consider this not just today, but as you progress into 2022. Again, the question is, how would my life and the lives of those around me look different if I were to truly own my influence each day? See, what I really want you all to grasp, or for all of us to grasp today, is that no matter your position or title, personally or professionally, you have influence, and it is significant. How we choose to wield that influence, though, and whether or not you're intentional with it, is up to you. See, we possess the capacity to lift others up and challenge them to pursue the purpose with which God has created them, as well as the capacity for contributing negativity and detracting from the overall momentum of both ourselves and others. The really cool thing here, though, is we get to choose. See, the words we say and the actions that we take are an example for those around us. We can choose to lead by example and take extreme ownership over our capacity to consistently add value to those within our circle of influence, regardless of what others are saying and doing. And that's an extremely important point, too. Don't simply wait for somebody to set the tone. You are somebody. You all are somebody, myself included. So we need to set the tone. If by chance, however, you're still doubting the reality that you have influence at all, I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I able to serve even one person in one way? There's a Bible verse, Mark 10:45, that says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." Now, regardless of your personal beliefs or faith, I think most of us, if not all of us, could likely agree that Jesus had and continues to have tremendous influence in the world. And he came to serve. We can do the same. So why is this relevant to you, or why should you care? So opportunities for influence are everywhere, all the time, and for everyone. But even more so for those like all of you here who are in positions of leadership. So I love these words from Brendan Burchard. He says, "If you lack the intention for excellence, you will always default to the impulse for ease." I don't want us to squander our opportunities for influence any longer. You can choose to live life intentionally, pay attention, and seize the many opportunities that are around you and within you. Now, I want you to picture with me 3 concentric circles, with yourself at the middle, your immediate circle of influence in the next circle, so your family, your friends, and your coworkers, and then your community and the world in the outermost circle. I believe these 3 groups represent key opportunities for us to own our influence. We're going to start with yourself at the center. I believe that we first must be able to effectively influence ourselves if we're ever going to have any sort of meaningful and lasting impact beyond that. Leo Tolstoy once said, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." I once came across an image that I think conveyed this sentiment really well, and in the image, it portrayed an individual speaking to a group, similar to how we're interacting here this morning. And the individual asked the group, "How many of you would like change in your life?" And everybody raised their hand. You probably know where this is going. But then he next asked the group, "How many of you would like to change?" and nobody raised their hand. In order for meaningful change to happen and last, we must desire a life different from our current circumstances more than our fear of uncertainty and failure. Now, many of you probably know of or have at least heard the name Nelson Mandela. He was the first democratically elected president of South Africa, and he served as president from 1994 to 99. His path to the presidency was anything but sunshine and rainbows, though. Prior to that, he was actually imprisoned by his government for 27 years for his strong anti-apartheid stance. And Tony Robbins once recounted a conversation he had with Nelson Mandela, where he had asked him, "How did you deal with all of that suffering, being unjustly imprisoned for 27 years?" Mandela's response was absolutely remarkable. He said, "That wasn't suffering, Tony. That was preparation." Now, he said that either I would die in prison and my death would spark a revolution in the country that would lead to change, or I knew that one day I would get out and I would need to be prepared to lead. That is perspective. That's someone who knew the power and the importance of owning his influence over himself and his mindset. Mindset is monumental, guys. So consider this. What is your reputation with yourself? Do you decide ahead of time how you want to show up and the value that you want to contribute to your interactions? Or do you simply react to the many things in your day? It's certainly an easy trap to fall into. We get busy, we get overwhelmed, and far too often we allow the barrage of calls and emails and texts and different tasks to derail us from being intentional. When we don't know what we want our day to be about, we simply consume everything rather than actually creating what we want. Now, there are some things we can do to help address this. I think we need to cultivate our discipline by doing hard things, by pushing outside our comfort zone, by visualizing our intended outcomes, and by taking massive action. Again, those things, we need to cultivate our discipline by doing hard things, regularly pushing outside our comfort zone, visualizing our intended outcomes, and taking massive action. Now, our friend Rob Key recently shared a post online that I absolutely loved with a quote, and it said, "The biggest human temptation is to settle for too little." I think this is absolutely correct. So the danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. And I can assure you that we were all made for more than mediocrity, so we should stop aiming for it. There's a quote by Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, that says, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" And when I ask myself this question, I actually like to flip the "for" to a "from." And I say, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best from yourself? So I want you to think of and write down at least one way in particular that you can better own your influence over yourself in the coming year. Even simply writing this down will help to hold you accountable and increase the likelihood that you'll take action towards it. For me, I'll go ahead and share an example of one thing that I have committed to this year to better own my influence over myself, and it pertains to my physical health. But given that it's 2022, I've committed to do some combination of running and or biking at least 22 miles every single week for the rest of the year. Something that, again, using the 22 helps keep it top of mind. It's something that I can remember to do. Is there any of you that would like to share maybe anything that came to your mind, something you would like to commit to this year to better own your influence over yourself? Yeah.
So I'm trying to tap into my creativity.
Okay.
This year, so I've committed to blogging 3 times a week and drawing twice a week.
That's awesome. Very cool. Anybody else? If not, yeah.
I'm an aspiring motivational speaker, so it would be to actually get more practice with communities and things like that.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, if nothing came to the top of your mind, or if you don't want to say something out loud, please feel free to reach out to me online. I'd love to hear the things that you're committing to and that you're excited about to better own your influence over yourself in the coming year. So next, we're going to move out in our 3 circles to the middle and focus on our family, our friends, and our coworkers. I think we must commit to influence one life at a time within our immediate circle. And I don't necessarily mean that you can literally only focus on influencing one life at a time, But if we're not able to effectively influence even one person, it's unlikely we'll be able to scale our influence beyond that. So, sorry about that. It's obviously important that we have a big vision that we want to accomplish, but we should never lose sight of the incremental steps along the way. I think Gary Vaynerchuk has a really cool concept and way of thinking about this. He calls it clouds and dirt. So the clouds represent the vision we must have, and the dirt represents the work we must consistently put in order to realize that vision. One of the mantras I have for myself and that I strive to live by is to give anything less than my absolute best in whatever I am doing is only a disservice to myself, others, and ultimately to the capacity with which I've been blessed. Now, I certainly don't do this perfectly all the time, but I do genuinely try to implement this way of thinking in every area of my life, including at work. And one of the ways in which this has borne itself out, actually, is that I've earned the reputation for being extremely positive. And as a result, I was actually given the nickname at work, Never Negative Nick. And one coworker once even said that I was aggressively positive and uninvitingly friendly. I was like, it kind of sounds like a bad movie review, but I was like, I know you meant that as an insult, even in a joking manner, but honestly, it was one of my favorite compliments I've ever received. I was like, it's so cool to see when someone you see that shift in their mindset and their attitude as a result of you choosing to set a positive tone. And it's not like I'm immune to being irritated or frustrated just like anybody else, because I certainly am. But by choosing to intentionally own my influence over my coworkers and set the tone in a positive manner, I believe it creates a more productive and enjoyable work environment. And one of my favorite things to witness is when you see an individual really start to own the example that you're setting for them. And like I said, you see that shift. But what's even more satisfying is when you see that coworker start to set the example for the other coworkers around you. Success is about succession. So we need to always strive to inspire the leader in those we lead. So again, now I want you to think of and write down at least one way in which you can better own your influence over your immediate circle, your family, your friends, and your coworkers. So again, I'll share an example that I have committed to for this year. Again, making reference to the year 2022. But to better own my influence over my family and to be more present, I've committed to stay off my phone entirely for the first 2 hours of the day and the last 2 hours before my kids go to bed. Just keep it in an entirely separate room so that I can focus on being present and owning my influence over them. Does anybody have any ideas that came to their mind on how they can better own their influence over their immediate circle this year? Any ideas? Okay. Absolutely, I agree. Authenticity fosters trust. So, yeah. Yeah, did you ever hear that?
Sorry, I will volunteer every time that no one volunteers. I am that person.
Not a problem.
I committed to starting my morning with a guided meditation through an app.
Okay.
And the first thing it asks you to do every morning is set your intention for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is around who are you inspiring, who are you touching today.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into the day with intentionality. Yeah.
So like you, I'm a Jesus follower, and I've always brushed aside, somebody else would do that. So this year I committed to having women's Bible studies in my home. So stepping into that leadership and, being vulnerable and inviting them in my home and being the leader of it. And so it's quite exciting.
Very, very cool. Congratulations. That's awesome. Anybody else? No? Yes, sir.
So one thing I've done, you talk about sharing some of the goals that you've set for yourself, is I've always been very intentional personally, but this year I'm trying to influence others to do the same and actually document what those are, particularly at home as well as at work, so that we're all very consciously aware of what each of us have committed to, and so we can effectively support each other.
Yeah.
And so that's something I'm doing this year, is trying to encourage as many people as I can to put what their intentions are on paper so we can all see it, read it, share it, and then really, really support each other to meet and exceed our own expectations.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, accountability is huge. So, Again, if any of you feel free or want to share with me later on, or you don't want to say it out loud, feel free to reach out online. I love hearing about people committing to things that they will do to better own their influence and improve their life and the lives of those around them. So next, we'll move out to the outermost circle that I referenced earlier, to the community and the world. Steve Jobs once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." And Thomas Edison said, "If we all did the things we are capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves." See, our communities, our country, and the world are desperately in need of integrity-filled leaders who are willing to own their influence. Will you be one of them? For me, I think, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? We need to find ways to engage, serve, and lead within our communities. For example, I'll reiterate this point. I'm extremely grateful to Jim and Jerry Johnson and the First Fridays board. Because they chose to own their influence in this manner, Northeast Indiana and the beyond is directly benefiting as a result. See, when we get involved with something big or overwhelming, the outcome may be uncertain. But what I know to be true for sure is that it's truly remarkable to see the impact that can be made through you when you're willing to share who you've been created to be with the world. So now I want you to think of and write down at least one way that you can better own your influence over your community and the world in the coming year. Anybody have any ideas they'd like to share that come top of mind? This is a little bit bigger concept, maybe than yourself or your immediate circle. But are there any ideas that come to people's mind? Yes, ma'am.
Boy, I think they could volunteer for junior achievement.
That's a great example. Right? I'm sure you'll be around afterwards to maybe discuss those opportunities. Yeah? All right, so what do we actually need to do to more consistently own our influence? I want to share with you 3 ways in particular that I believe, if executed on, will help you to more consistently own your influence. And I actually came up with an acronym to help us remember these. The acronym is OWN, O-W-N. So we need to be more observant of both ourselves and others. We must be self-aware and honest with ourselves in order to recognize our opportunities for growth. We should never believe that we have arrived, but rather I think we should adopt and cultivate the mindset of a student in this capacity, always striving to learn, grow, and become more of who we've been created to be. We also need to be observant of those around us so that we can recognize our opportunities to serve them. Now, there's certainly no shortage of opportunities, but when we become more observant, we'll be aware of those opportunities to a greater extent. All that's left to do at that point is to act, which leads us directly to the next point in the acronym, the W, which stands for willing. We must be willing to act. We must be willing to do the work necessary on ourselves and the work necessary to serve those around us. If we see an opportunity but we're not willing to act, it's simply an intention at best. And intentions are anything but influential and impactful. And then, as with everything in life, it's what we actually do with what we know that truly makes a difference. And finally, the N in the acronym stands for never. Never compromise your character, for your character and integrity are directly correlated to your capacity for meaningful and consistent influence. I want to repeat that once more, because I think it's extremely important and especially relevant today. Never compromise your character, for your character and integrity are directly correlated to your capacity for meaningful and consistent influence. So to quickly review and summarize those points, in order to better own our influence, we need to be more observant of both ourselves and others, we need to be willing to act and serve, and we must never compromise our character. So why is it important that we consistently seize our opportunities for influence? I know many of you have likely seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, and it's probable that many of you likely watched it recently given the Christmas season. I absolutely love this movie as I think there are many life lessons that we can learn from it. But in my opinion, one of the most significant lessons we can learn directly correlates to our topic today, the importance of owning your influence. George Bailey, which is Jimmy Stewart's character in the movie for the possible few of you who maybe haven't seen the movie, He had the opportunity, or the capacity, I should say, for influence prior to his experience. He was in charge of the bank. He was a father. He was a husband. But like I mentioned before, the problem is when we leave our influence untapped and without a purpose. See, he had the opportunity to see what his life and the lives of those around him would be like, absent even his unintentional influence. Thankfully, he had the opportunity to then return to his family and his community with a renewed perspective on the importance of owning his influence and of being grateful. Imagine for a moment the world without even your unintentional influence or your current influence. You matter significantly. Now imagine yourself, your family, your workplace, and even the world if you were to truly own your influence on a daily basis. Don't hit the snooze button on your life. Now, I do realize the irony in me making that recommendation, as far too often me and the snooze button are like this, but I'm working on it. In all seriousness, though, don't hit the snooze button on your life. Stop saying next time, someday, next year, once this happens, etc. You need to act boldly today, for none of us are promised tomorrow. I don't want you to let your life drift by unaffected by your intentional influence, for we were all created for so much more than a life of mere existence. Now, in considering everything that we've discussed so far this morning, I again want you to consider this question. How would my life and the lives of those around me look different if I were to truly own my influence each day? How would my life and the lives of those around me look different if I were to truly own my influence each day? You may doubt yourself at times and believe that your influence and your purpose is irrelevant or seemingly unimportant. You may even believe that not acting on your purpose is of no consequence for anybody. What you're failing to recognize, however, is that what God has sown inside of you is not just about you. When you cultivate your purpose and your influence, the harvest is meant to benefit others as well, and ultimately to bring glory to the very one who planted your purpose inside you. Your purpose in action is an incredibly powerful influence on the world, for your purpose is the very reason for which you were created. I want to challenge you today, my friends, to take a step of faith and see what God can and will do with your purpose in action. So as you move intentionally into 2022, I want you to continue to think about how you can better own your influence over yourself, over your immediate circle, your family, your friends, and your coworkers, and even the community and the world at large, by becoming more observant, by being willing to act and serve, and by never compromising your character. So if you haven't done so already, let today be the day you make the decision to own your influence. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nick. That was really, really powerful and really helpful. We're going to open it up for questions. I have to open up by asking first, it's 2022. How many miles have you run this week so far?
So I have a lot to catch up on. I think I've done 4 so far this week, so I got to put in a lot this weekend. Yep.
15 more to go. Very good. What questions do we have for Nick?
Yes, ma'am.
Nick, so if there are times in your life that you are grumpy, whether it be, you woke up and you don't feel well, or you're the wrong side of that, or there's a series of events that have led for you to be grumpy, what actions and thoughts do you take to change your mindset?
Okay, very good question. So if for any of you, did you guys all hear the question? Okay. So if you wake up and you're grumpy, how can you change your mindset on that? So for me, it's all about trying to change the lens through which I'm viewing what I'm experiencing and trying to develop a different perspective on it. So it's like, obviously we all encounter obstacles in our day, things that are frustrating to us. It's not like any one of us is ever immune to those things. But what I always try to do, and my wife can attest to this, is I always try to reframe whatever I'm experiencing. If I'm starting to get a bad attitude or I'm being negative, one, I have asked her, and I think this is another step here we can do, is ask people that you trust to hold you accountable, and that I guess that have your best interest in mind as well, so that you don't automatically become defensive. So she'll call me out if I start to get negative, and I've asked her to do that, so it's not a bad thing. But she will point out, like, hey, your attitude is getting a little negative here. And so I will then reframe and say, okay, how can I better view this as a learning experience? What can I learn from this? How can I better think about this situation? And again, I think it's always about looking at other things other people are experiencing too, similar to I think of the Nelson Mandela examples and things that other people have experienced and done so with grace and with intentionality and with purpose. And when you reframe it in that light, I think it makes all of our problems seem less significant. It's not that they're insignificant, but it seems less impactful on how that it's influencing our state of mind. I think it was 2 months ago, I think it was, Jennifer Ruth Green was speaking, and she was asked how to overcome fear, and she talked about her perspective was that when you jump out of a plane, that you have if your parachute doesn't open, you have the rest of your life to figure it out. I thought that was a really cool example because it's it's so true. Some of the problems we make so big in our mind, we fear map and think, well, okay, what if this happens? What if this happens? And we imagine a worst case scenario that may not even happen. So when we can reframe our perspective on it and think of it in light of, in my opinion, when we think of things in light of eternity, it reframes our perspective in a more productive and positive manner. Anybody else?
I have more of a comment than a question, and with all your prompts throughout your talk, one of my goals, I'm saying it out loud,
Yeah, I love it.
is to read The Purpose-Driven Life.
Rick Warren, yeah.
I know he's rewrote it, a new edition for the millennials. So that, I think, would illuminate a lot of that, the answers to your questions.
Oh, I agree.
So, what is our purpose? What's our purpose? I recently retired, so that's why I look so happy.
That's the trick.
But it's also to hit the reset button.
Mm-hmm.
I felt my interests in things were changing. So I'm kind of in that midlife area. So that is one of my 2022 goals. And I'm putting a number 10 books to read 10 books this year. I said it out loud.
That's awesome.
So I think I'm a big believer. I have to think a lot of you in this room are too. Is knowledge you get it from books, then it becomes you own it, and that's how you can share it.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the answer to one of your questions. What I would like to do.
I love it.
Can I ask? Has anyone else read that book?
I have.
Okay.
Yep. It's a very good book.
I have a comment for her.
Yeah.
If you are committed to reading the 10 books this year, there's a Facebook group called, I think it's called Read Fort Wayne or Fort Wayne Reads, and anybody can join it. People post what they've read, they give reviews, they make comments. It's a great motivator and a great way to find books.
Very cool. Man, collaboration and networking happening already. Anything else? No? Well, feel free to reach out afterwards if you have any questions or comments. I'd love to hear them. And I want to thank you all again for coming out. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Let's also give it up for Junior Achievement. What a beautiful building. I would like to introduce the president of Junior Achievement Northern Indiana, Lena Yarian.
Thank you. Thank you for being here
Step up
today.
inside.
Awesome way of starting out 2022. I love the message. I've been here for 35 years. I can tell you and seeing it every day here at Junior Achievement, every one of you are an influencer. Words matter. And then just quick story, my son was in 4th grade, not particularly confident, and he was doodling, and that teacher had one or two things to say. She could have said, stop, pay attention, but she didn't. She said, wow, you're an artist. My son believed he was an artist from 4th grade all the way up through high school. He took art classes. So I can tell you, words matter, and if you can start with gratitude, you will have come with your words to a totally different place. So I want to thank you for being here today. We have to thank the community for this amazing facility. It's all because we have an amazing, generous community that recognize that they can have an impact, and you can see the impact every day here at Junior Achievement. So thank you. You have an annual report there. That was COVID. This year we reached about 142,000 students, and it's because of the generosity of this community. We have a quick drawing, so I guess...
Oh, go ahead.
Nope, so I guess we'll bring that up real quick.
Well, I was going to go ahead and go around. If you have not put a business card in, I'll wander around real quick if you guys got one.
And when he's doing that, we're going to invite you for a quick tour if you want to stay around and he's gathering those to the right over here is J Biztown for 5th and 6th graders, so the students actually run an economy for a day. And then over here is J Finance.
Probably more equipped than many of our politicians at this point.
All about personal finance and budgeting. And it's you talk about want to be a game changer in your life. If you have a control over your finances, you feel like you have control over a lot in life. So. This is for a car.
So let me get my card out there.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we got the little erasers. We got the little erasers.
Matchbox car. Right?
Yeah, you go
I
ahead.
got a draw.
You're the man.
All right. All right, we got John Richards.
All right.
Thank you.
Great work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We got one other gift here.
All righty. No peeking. And I apologize, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Cheryl or Cheryl? Carl? Is it Cheryl? Sorry about that.
One last comment. Our motivational speaker to be gave you tons of opportunities to influence.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you again, and you will join Karen for a tour right there, and I'll let you start with that meeting.
All righty.
Yeah, thank you all for being here this morning. Thanks for braving the cold and the weather. Next month we'll be back at ILU, right, Jim? Back at ILU? Yes. Okay. We've got China Presley from Huntington University. She's the Director of Intercultural Enrichment. You want to be there for that. But thank you for being here today. Go out and own your influence and go get lunch with John today. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.